What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to work with them lunar shenanigans? Get a feel for the week, because you know what? This is one of those weeks, the moon is waxing, it's starting to build up some steam. I really think that this is a time where if you want to, this reminds me of those times it's like striking while the iron's hot. While there's things that are moving there, this can be where you can see some areas move, a little bit, see some progress somewhere, get some sort of like breakthroughs. But again, there's like this little pocket. It starts off mild, we get some green, but then it ends on a weird note. So we're gonna go through all that here in a moment. But if you're new here, again, my name is Justin, and one of the things I do on this channel is talk about the lunar shenanigans, and that's just really to, the moon deals with how we're feeling, and it's really to just get a feel for the energies of the week and how the moon, how we connect with the moon and how this, just how to really sink in with the fluctuations that happen in this on a regular basis there. Because tuning up to the moon is a very powerful thing, so. And I'm going to be covering the week of August 26th. That felt like that could have been a little more seamless. That's fine, we're going to keep moving. But I'm going to be covering the week of August 26th up to November, or to November. It's going to be a long one. No, up to September 1st, 2025. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. I already get up to September here. Happy solar return for those of you who got your sun in Virgo, by the way. I actually got a lot of Virgos I need to reach out to. But let's get into this. Because on a Mars day, the 26th of August, we got the moon in Libra here, and we're in a waxing crescent phase. Now, the first aspect that the moon is going to be forming on this day is a conjunction with Mars, which is normally a pretty hard aspect, when we're dealing with that, because now the moon is coming in with the lesser malefic, and Mars can sometimes deal with those energies of anger, frustration, sometimes even like misdirection, secrets, things like that. So when we're, this could be where, kind of starting off maybe feeling some sort of like, again, maybe some sort of anger and like, or frustration with like a relationship that you're in, or like whether it be in love, in friendship, in family, maybe you're thinking about relationship with the workspace, maybe it's something with an environment, just something's just not feeling right, it's just like, it's got maybe, quite feeling a little on edge, and it's like you're trying to make sense of it, when we're talking about this moon in Libra energy, it's like we're in this feelings, but there's still that mental component with that Libra energy, and it's trying to figure out where to initiate from, which way to go, what do we want to do about this. In this one, I would say, why I kind of judged this as a mixed day was that it may start off with that conjunction with Mars, but then it's going to form a square with Jupiter, and Big Papa's overcoming the moon in this scenario, which is it's the home sign of the moon. So this can be where, okay, you're feeling this sense of, this way, if you're feeling that sense of stagnancy, whatever that is, frustration, anger, this could be where it's like, what, let me have that conversation with this person, that moon in Libra. Let me put out my resume. Let me look into different areas to live, and let me look to see what's within my power to start moving the needle. This would be, with Jupiter is talking about, with that, let me get my thoughts together, with the square, there is that energy of tension, but it's a square with the greater, with the greater benefic, Jupiter. So we're not thinking about what we don't have, or, the things that we wish we had. Well, I mean, we are focused on things we wish we have, but it's like not just wishing about them, but taking action about them, taking some sort of like problem-solving steps and things, because now we get into being more eloquent with our words, because then the moon is going to form a sextile with Mercury, and that's the one I got up here that's going to be having about 18 degrees in 19 minutes of Libra. Mercury's in Leo, and that sextile is again creating that sense of opportunity. The planets are 60 degrees apart. They're an active energy. That Libra energy is initiating. The Mercury is behind the idea. It's taking that like, okay, yes, I want to change this job. Let me just put my resumes out there. Let me talk with such and such. Mercury putting that communication out there. See if maybe they know someone who's maybe hiring somewhere, or maybe you want to go in on a joint venture. Maybe start that business project. So it can be a really nice energy, I think. Well, kind of a mixed bag, where it may start off with the frustration, could lead to some creative solutions there. And that energy is really kind of taking us into Mercury Day, and to kind of take that feeling too, because it's going to be interesting. We were kind of processing this stuff. thinking about those things, getting ready to initiate, and then around about 6:27 p.m., again that's Pacific time, the moon is going to move into Scorpio. Now this is normally a tricky one here, and I got on the chart here, the moon is entering here at 0 degrees of Scorpio. And this is normally a tricky position for the moon because this is where the moon finds itself in its fall. And when a celestial body is in its fall, it just feels this sense of being lowered, or in the sense of, how the exaltation is being raised. This could be like feeling imprisoned or feeling trapped in some sort of ways there. The moon is used to, kind of flowing through the emotions in Cancer, but now the moon has to more so kind of be a little more forceful when we're working with Scorpio. The energies tend to get a little locked in sometimes with the moon, and it can get, those intense feelings. And that could be where if we let the Mars energy overcome us, and not really see the expansiveness, then it can just be a lot of just like intense emotions or just that feeling of agitation and that almost that feeling of helpless and hopelessness that sometimes Mars can even bring in there. But what I think something to think about with Scorpio is too, that there's a strong focus with Scorpio. This could be seeing underneath a narrative, really, allowing your moon, that moon in Scorpio to kind of feel through this thing. Like, what, it doesn't always have to be this way. It don't have to always have to be in these certain relationships or this certain environment or this certain situation or this certain, dilemma that maybe you're dealing with. Things can change, and then channel that feeling, take that feeling of hope, of, this is how I think Scorpio can be worked with constructively, because they feel more than just the like intense emotions. They feel all the ranges of emotions. And again, if you can focus on that sense of, take that idea of that things can change, the idea of possibilities, then we get to the green. It's all green, baby. And now we get into Jupiter Day, the 28th of August. Moon's still in Scorpio, the energy's still building up in that waxing crescent. And the first thing that the moon is forming is a square with Venus. Now, again, that's nice because any sort of aspect with the benefics, even harder aspects, they're leading to this sense of beneficence, this sense of opportunities here. So this could be where, okay, you've been feeling that again, that sense of stagnancy, and now we're maybe forming different relationships, we're maybe networking with different people. If you're trying to find a different job, or if you're maybe trying to start up a business, maybe you're looking for, try to connect with some people, trying to find like a loan, things like that. Really kind of getting focused, getting down to business. I think with this moon kind of squaring Venus there, this could be where someone could even help kind of guide you, really kind of have some maybe a more kind of intense, maybe like an in-depth conversation, get a little personal with someone, just like, hey, I'm just looking, I could use a guiding light right now with that Venus and Leo, someone to kind of help spark the fires, to kind of get things on track there. And then that moon goes to sextile the sun here at 5 degrees 27 minutes of Scorpio, and that's nice, I think, with the moon and the sun there. Again, this could be an idea of taking the feelings that are coming up there, and then that sun in Virgo is problem solving, it's figuring out solutions, it's coming up with ways of changing this scenario, with working with the resources that we do have. Again, I think Virgo is very handy like that. It's very, very capable, in those types of situations there. So this is a really nice energy. I think that we're kind of leaning in. And just something to mention too, now that the moon's kind of moved into this fixed placement here, this may be a little even more, these aspects may be a little more personal for you, a little more active time if you happen to have a lot of fixed placements. That's going to be Scorpio, Aquarius, Taurus, and Leo here. Now, as we move to the next one, we're still going green. Things are still kind of, we're moving along here. So even though, again, the moon may be kind of feeling a lot, or, maybe coming up with these little moments here in Scorpio, the moon's receiving a lot of support from the benefics, because now the moon's going to be forming a trine with Jupiter there, and that's when things are really kind of going with ease there. We've been kind of focusing on whatever tasks that you've been wanting to change, and now we're really starting to see some momentum there with that trining Jupiter. The expansion is seeming more possible, it's feeling more like, things are maybe like tangible results are really starting to show up there. However big or small, any sort of progress is positive progress. But now with with that moon maybe squaring Mercury there, the only maybe kind of challenge would be is to how to continue that momentum, to kind of keep this thing going, that fixed energy. Because now that you've got that push, we of course we want to keep that consistency. The fixed signs where, we're all, we can adapt, sure, because I have a lot of fixed energy in my chart where, it's like I can change thankfully to that mutable moon. There's a strong side of me that loves that routine, that loves that sense there. So it's like trying to figure out how to keep that consistent there with that Mercury in Leo, keep focus with that moon in Scorpio, because it's like, remember this feeling that we're trying to hold here. So that's what I really kind of enjoy about this little period of time here. It's really kind of nice, and again, it doesn't stop giving. This is dope. And you know what I do want to say too, as where there is all this dopeness, it is, again, we're still kind of moving through some challenges, obviously in this, it doesn't take away that in order to change something, there has to be something wrong in this. And that's where I think even coming in too, first the moon's going to move from Scorpio into Sagittarius. Now we're kind of getting the moon's kind of shaking off that water, it's kind of firing up a bit. We're on a Saturn day now, which is the 30th of August. And then the moon moves into Sag at about 7:05 a.m. And again, that's Pacific time. And it'll start off forming a trine with Saturn. So, there's Saturn. We're feeling the weight of Saturn. But now the moon is overcoming Saturn in this instance. And so this could be where it's like, yes, we have the, their feelings around the work here. But now we're feeling a little more motivated with that moon in Sagittarius, hopefully. That's the idea. Something to keep in mind if you have a lot of mutable placements, this may be a more active time. That's Sag, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo. But you could feel a little more enthusiastic about the endeavor, about the task here. Because even the kind of nice thing with this too, as soon as the moon enters here, now the moon and Big Papa are at least in each other's domiciles here. So there's a mutual reception that's going on there. Even if it's not quite by sign, this at least is somewhat helpful. Those topics are going to be closely intertwined with one another there. And any sort of support with the benefics. And now even the moon is, and that's going to be perfect because I'm about to talk about that next. Because the moon is going to be trining Venus. Look at how the story's just telling itself. But this could be a nice thing too, where again you're feeling enthusiastic about the work, you're taking the task, and now we find even too where even like Venus can maybe help bring in some support in that. And it may not be people necessarily helping you actively through this, but you could be talking about your progress, and people are just like, really kind of like, I love hearing that. Like, it's good to finally see some good things going for that, just like that positive reinforcement, like like just feeling like, hey, or even if you have that question like, like, am I doing too much, and blah, any kind of doubts, like this could be Venus, the cheerleader, kind of just rooting things on. They're just kind of going here. And you know what, with this moon kind of, because now, as we're coming up to this, we're getting into the first quarter phase, and that's going to happen at about 11:24 p.m. And that's when the moon is squared the sun, and when we're thinking about the first quarter phase, we got about another week until we get to the full moon cycle here. And with the moon phases, you can grow during it, during any time of the moon phases. But there are, again, when I was talking about those pockets of kind of optimal time, they're striking while the iron's hot. This is hot. This is that heat. This is the time where if you haven't taken that action, if you've been feeling this thing, to not let the emotions, especially what you just felt through, what we feel through when we go through Scorpio, to not let those just, again, be wasted emotions, to let those be where it's like, okay, I felt that thing. Yeah, this is, I want these changes, and let them be more than just wishes. Let them be something that we can actually bring to life, And then, because now we're getting to, on a Sunday, the 31st of August, and now we're getting to the, right now we're at the waxing gibbous phase. The moon's lit. The moon's giving a lot of light here. We're getting closer and closer to that full moon. And, again, this is where we still got an opportunity here with the moon sextiling Mars. It's a softer aspect with Mars, so that's why I kind of put it in neutral. We like that. But it's still feeling that need for taking initiative with Mars. There's, I think maybe sometimes with Mars in Libra, where sometimes I think Mars and Libra can be impulsive, cannot, think before it acts. I think on the other, at the end though, I think another way Mars and Libra could come up is talking oneself out of an opportunity, thinking that maybe something's too good to be true, like, oh, that's not possibly meant for me. Like it's those tricks that we kind of tell ourselves. Mars is really kind of calculated. You think about the war general with Mars, and that requires that level of strategy. And I think that that's something where to just kind of pay attention to how maybe if you do happen to talk yourself out of something, that kind of sense of that self-undoing, the destroying the idea, that cardinal error, destroying the idea before it actually even comes to life, before even giving it a chance to see what kind of fire you can put behind that with that moon in Sagittarius here. So that would be something where, again, this is the time to, that little period before would have been definitely more optimal, but now is better than any time, because when we get to the when we get to Moon Day, and this is how we're ending our week, the moon right before it enters into Capricorn, it has this very nice conversation with Mercury, and then very awkward conversation with Saturn, like right thereafter, because they're both at the end degrees of Leo and Pisces. For Leo for Mercury, Pisces for Saturn. We're in the waxing gibbous phase. We start with that trine in Mercury, and this could maybe be that realization where it's like, what, you're right. Hopefully when you heard me say that, it's just like, you're right. You know what, I do need to quit talking myself out of this. I can do this thing, blah, blah, blah. I got this. I'm ready to move. And then we get to the moon squaring Saturn, and then it's just like, but man, there's like all the things to still do, but there's like where. And now it's not to say that it feels, because it's still possible, like, of course, it's always possible to get out of a situation, to change a situation, but it's like when you're going to plan a trip, when you're looking at things, you want to plan for, if you see the forecast is going to be storming, then we maybe shoot for a different day. And if we can't, then we got to plan accordingly, and I think that this is as we get to this end of the week here, that even if we were to make any sort of progress during this period of time, that there always are going to be these roadblocks, there are always going to be these kind of like hurdles here, where there's going to be a challenge when it's just like the growth reaches some sort of like plateau or some sort of like new obstacle, and then the moon moves into Capricorn at about 6:08 p.m. And then it's a reminder of the great work, because it's like with Capricorn, it's different when like the moon is in like the earth sign of like Taurus, and we're working in lush fields. The temperature is mild, it's warm, it's there's moisture there. When we're in Capricorn under Saturn ruled energy, the environment is harsher, it's darker, it's colder. Things can grow, but it just takes a long time. It's harder, but that again, harder doesn't mean impossible. And I think it's remembering here, because the nice thing is where the moon is squaring Saturn, but then it's going to enter Saturn's sign, and it's just like all right, you're right, let's get to work. Let's just get to work. Let's just get this thing done, And, and it could be, this, I'm getting this kind of sense to it. It would be like where it's like you knew you could have, because we've all been there, where we knew we should have started something sooner, but then put it off, and then we were forced to do it. And now where the thing's done, it was out of our control, and I think that this week can help us to do things to get into our control. So even when we hit those roadblocks, it's like, what, I set this up, so like now it's like, okay, what's going to be the next thing? At least I know that I can get things moving, at least I know that I can see this stuff here. I just got to work with the energies. And right now Saturn said, all right, let's stop for a minute. Let's stop for a minute. And, sometimes when Saturn says stop, I'm like, fine. Fine. Let me just be with the weight of Saturn for a minute, and that's never fun. It's never fun, but it is something I think that ultimately can be surmountable. Just with a little patience, a little time, and just mustering through. And finding those bits of motivation. To kind of help keep us going, and understanding that these seeing just how even the moon relates to the different signs, how we can change to relating to different situations each day. So and feeling hopefully more connected in all of this too. So, but yeah, that's the energy of the week. That's the feel, and yeah. Hopefully, you can really kind of see how the moon is kind of laying things out here. How we're kind of moving through this energy. You see how the moon can be really influential on us all. When we're going through this, even though the moon's moving so fast, when you tune in, it really kind of helps you kind of dial in on those sort of things. Understand the fluctuations. Like, oh, it's Capricorn time. I got a lot of cardinal places. Let me lay low. Let me be mindful of my energies, and that's not always the case. I've always mentioned I have a lot of fixed placements, and in particular Scorpio, where the moon happens to be in its fall, is usually a really active time for me. And sometimes it's tougher, and I do just want to be at home. But other times it's like, this was really constructive. I really like this was good. And they're about matched roughly in how they've been experienced. But yeah, so hopefully this has been helpful for you there. And if that's something where you want to see how these things work more personally in your chart, maybe happening going through a moon year where the moon's the time lord of your year, so that'd be really important to kind of keep eyes on this moon, because that's how you get an experience of what it's like to have Cancer placements when you're going through a moon year. But if that's something that you want to look into more thoroughly, more personally, down in the description box there is a link to book a consultation with me. So definitely check that out. And if you have any questions about the services that I provide, my email's down there as well. And down in the comments, talk about how you've been working through this energy, how you've been experiencing stuff through this week. How you've been, hopefully with this one, how we're all just kind of rising up in this scenario here. Because I like the middle of the week. that was a nice little pocket there. So I'd love to hear how you all are experiencing these energies as well. And yeah, also there's a link for a playlist down there for the Celestial News Weekly, which just talks about the sun. If you want to see what's happening with the sun and the other classical planets, then go check that out. And then I also do these videos that have different planetary placements and different zodiac signs in different houses, and my thoughts on those energies, how to maybe approach those things as you're looking at those topics. So just some extra things there for you, they're all by playlist. But until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that moon. now it's out and about. And I will catch you on the next one. Moon Day.